Subscribe now. EU Debates.
Mr. President, Prime Minister, Ministers, dear friends, typical. The EU has to step up, and immediately it's about money and how much money we're going to contribute. And I have to say, we announced, as you rightly said, that we will double our efforts. And we're good for our word. We will double our efforts. And I can also say that the exact amount will be announced by President von der Leyen later this week, so then you will know exactly what that means. Yeah, there's always a president above a vice president. What I wanted to say to you tonight is, first of all, a big thank you to Prime Minister Trudeau and his government for hosting this COP now that China, because of COVID, cannot do that. Prime Minister, you stepped in at a critical moment, not just to be our host, but also to show leadership in what we need to do to prevent this looming ecocide, to put an end to one species you've mentioned, and that's humanity. We need to understand that the looming ecocide and the climate crisis are two sides of the same coin. We also need to understand that there is this false contradiction between economic growth and a healthy environment. It should stop, because there is no economic growth when we neglect our natural environment. There is no economic growth when ecocide comes along. Economic growth can only happen in a healthy natural environment. And I think this is something we should understand better than we do today. I see so many champions here tonight. And we also hear that apparently POTUS is in town, if I hear all the helicopters. But all the champions here, I call upon you. You can call upon us to come up with the finances, to come up with the regulations. But I call upon you to help us, to make sure that everyone on this planet, who's now, vast majority of people are convinced that we're faced with a climate crisis that we need to address. Sadly, not everyone is equally convinced that this looming ecocide is an equally dangerous threat to our collective survival. So please, with all the contacts you have, with all these incredible efforts you do, in all these organizations you represent, help us bring this message home, because then humanity will rise to the task, as we are now step by step doing in facing the climate crisis. By the way, Canada, another leader in the climate crisis as well. I also want to salute those of you who've mentioned the role of indigenous people. I've seen over the last years incredible efforts. Costa Rica was mentioned. I could have mentioned Colombia as well. What's happening in the Amazonas, in engaging, in understanding that you can only have a healthy Amazonas if there is a balance between ecology, economy, and especially social justice. There is no future for our forests if we don't understand that we need to have balance between the three. And I think we see some incredible examples in Latin America, but also in Asia and in other places that show this. We also need to drive home the point that our trade policies should be in line, in sync with what we want to do for our natural environment. We should make sure that we drive out deforestation that is hurting us so much. We should help countries, for instance, to produce sustainable palm oil is possible. And things like that could create this balance I was looking for between ecology, economy, and social justice. So that, my friends, is our task for the coming years. I think we should also take a more holistic approach. The plastics legislation we've put on the table brings a huge contribution to taking plastics out of a natural environment, which makes our oceans cleaner. Once you set aside part of your ocean, like we're now proposing, you'll be amazed how quickly that ocean recovers. It's incredible what happens if you do that. Again, there is no contradiction between economy and ecology if you look at it from that perspective. And finally, the point I want to make, the experience I have in my own country. Mr. President, you said Ecuador is a small country. That's all part of perspective. I'm from the Netherlands, you know. But when you get all the stakeholders with conflicting interests at the table, you find solutions that accommodate the fishing community, that accommodate the nature preservation community, the transport community, the energy community. Solutions are possible. And this, I would call upon everyone to try this, because it does work, and that's the way forward. The European Union will be on your side. You will hear exactly how much money we add to that later this week. And thank you so much for organizing this. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And